Okay, guys, this is going to be an interesting comment section, but really, I want to have a frank conversation with you guys, given that the news from Gal Gadot herself a few days ago that she claims she's staying on as the DCU Wonder Woman. Now, what I want to talk about in this video, since, it's been interesting watching what everyone's saying ever since we first got that news. Is this a mistake that James Gunn is making for his new DCU? And we'll get into that in just a few minutes. But first of all, what I want to do is talk about the legitimacy behind this. Is this even happening? As I know some people don't remotely believe it. And then we'll discuss the ins and outs of what this could mean for the optics of Gunn's new DC universe. So, the first quote from the interview that she gave was, "I love portraying Wonder Woman. It's so close to and dear to my heart. From what I heard from James and from Peter is that we are going to develop a Wonder Woman 3 together." But then we got another quote from another interview asking this, and she replies, "We are developing a third movie and we will see what happens with it. No one ever talked to me about freezing. I was told that I was in good hands and that I could be calm. We were supposed to shoot the third film now with Patty, my beloved friend and the very talented director, but it won't happen." And as James Gunn and Peter Safran took over, Wonder Woman 3 was going to happen. Patty Jenkins did write a treatment for the sequel, the third movie, but the thing is, they didn't necessarily get rid of Gal Gadot, but what they did do is they're like, "Hey, Patty, we don't really like where you're going with this." So after this is when we get a lot of tweets from James Gunn. And what I'm about to read out to you, I wouldn't be surprised, especially given what I read a lot of people say in the comments, that maybe if you forgot some of these things. So early on in this thread of him talking about joining DC Studios with Peter Safran, knowing that they were coming into a very fractious environment, he said, "But in the end, the drawbacks of that transitional period were dwarfed by the creative possibilities and the opportunity to build upon what has worked in DC so far and help rectify what has not." Now, again, it's up to you in your opinion if you think that Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman has worked so far. I think there is credence to somewhat both sides of that argument. But either way, what I want to get to the bottom line of what he's discussing here is he admits that they want to build upon what has worked in DC. So you pair that with other things he said, which is even more on the nose. We have a fan saying here, "Cannot wait to see what you're cooking up. That being said, the move to boot Cavill and Gadot, especially after they had announced their return, doesn't inspire confidence." And this is pretty flat out. "I'm not sure where you're getting that we booted Gal." Here's another one, even more on the nose. "Looking forward to see the new projects, but I'm disappointed that you guys let Henry Cavill and Gal go, but still have Ezra around. They're a knucklehead while Henry and Gal have done it all right. Just makes no sense to me." Now James replies here by saying, "We didn't let Gal go. Ezra's movie is already made," makes sense. Like, he's basically saying, well, I'm not saying we've kept Ezra on or if we've got rid of Ezra, but the movie's already made. So you can't state to me that I have kept Ezra on, technically. Henry, though, he admits here, doesn't fit what I have for Superman. Hence, we've got David Corenswet now with an actual recast. But that beginning to the sentence and ending is fundamental. He literally admits that Henry Cavill doesn't fit what he has in mind for Superman. So what did he do? He recast him. We've got David Corenswet. The beginning of that sentence says, "We didn't let Gal go." He's keeping Gal Gadot on as Wonder Woman. Otherwise, he would have said, just like the end of that sentence, quite simply, "Gal doesn't fit what I have for Wonder Woman." And there is one more tweet that I want to add to all of this just because it adds even more evidence into how this isn't a hard reboot, and he has been keeping DCEU characters on this whole time. Admittedly, a lot of the DC characters that he cast for his projects. But we have this fan saying, "Who knows if it's true, but recasting all the main DCEU characters, but keeping some will be interesting to see how Peacemaker and Suicide Squad characters/actors live on, but the others don't, particularly when they have all interacted before." This is when Gunn says, "I keep seeing posts with this untrue theory. We are not recasting everyone except the Suicide Squad." And what he meant there, especially with everything else and all of that context in mind, he's inferring that he will be keeping some other DCEU characters in addition to his Suicide Squad / Peacemaker crew, because that's what he meant. Like, I keep seeing this post with this untrue theory. We're not going to recast everyone except my Suicide Squad characters. No, we are keeping some others on, and hence, with everything else we've just been over, it looks as though, especially according to Gal Gadot, in combination with all of this, that she is staying on in the DCU. And lastly, with regards to this, the fact that James Gunn has said absolutely nothing ever since Gal Gadot reinforced that she's staying on for Wonder Woman 3, in where he usually is very quick to shut down rumors, especially ones like this. Well, I just think that speaks volumes. But one more thing before we get into, is it a good idea to keep Gal Gadot on in the DCU or not? I want to address one other thing, in that I've seen a lot of people saying or thinking that, okay, this could be happening. Maybe they are developing another Wonder Woman with Gal Gadot. But the thing is, what if it's in an Elseworlds universe? What I have to say about this is that, we've got Elseworlds movies like The Batman from Matt Reeves. We've got Todd Phillips's The Joker and Joker 2 that are completely separate from the DCEU canon. But seriously, guys, I do not think that they're going to develop or carry on the literal DCEU continuity in an Elseworlds universe to, even arguably compete with their own somewhat new DCU. To expand on that a little bit more, I think, DC and even James Gunn is happy to make Elseworlds movies in their own right, such as the Batman, such as Joker, their own unique story and universe, but carrying on a previous mainline cinematic universe as an Elseworlds story under that Elseworlds label doesn't really add up to me. So let's finally get down to how people are feeling about this. Is this a mistake? Well, first of all, to answer this, I think I have to lay down on the table to really zoom out of the situation and be as objective as I can be. We have to lay on the table that James Gunn's DCU, his new DCU, has never been a hardcore, whatever you want to call it, reboot. I've kept seeing people again and again in my comment sections on various videos say things like, but it's supposed to be a complete reboot. Well, no, but believe it or not, it wasn't. We've got evidence of that. Now, try not misconstrue this into me saying, like, you can't be frustrated at this news. I'm not saying that you can't feel a certain way about Gunn keeping on Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman in his new DCU. And we will get to that in this video. But to say something like, screw Gunn because it was meant to be a complete and utter reboot, well, it's like, no, we've known for a fact since day one that they're keeping on some previous actors from the DCEU, such as Viola Davis, who plays Amanda Waller, John Cena as Peacemaker, and we've had major hints from Gunn that other people from the DCEU would also be kept, not just his Peacemaker and Suicide Squad camp. But even with us coming to terms with the whole, okay, so this isn't a hard reboot, should he keep one of the main faces of the old DCEU if you're trying to carve out something successful with the new continuity and universe? And I'm going to try my best to not sound like I've got double standards here through making the point I'm about to make, because you could argue to me here, well, if they're keeping some other DCEU characters, why can't they keep Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, right? And that makes sense. A lot of people are thinking this when it comes to that question, because at face value, what is the big issue with keeping on one particular DCEU actor when Gunn has already said that they're keeping several others already? Well, this is where a lot of people, including myself here, does view that there is a bit of a difference, and you may know what I'm about to talk about. So the difference that's being pointed out by a lot of people who feel this way is that keeping some of the smaller characters, such as Peacemaker or the Peacemaker crew, Freddie Stromer as Vigilante, Steve Agee as John Economos, and others, they aren't nearly as recognizable to the public audience or linked to the former DCEU canon, if you will, versus that of keeping one of the main faces of the previous universe on in your new DCU with the same actor. So that is the question from the optics side of this that I'm seeing over and over again. Is Gal Gadot too associated with the DCEU and Affleck Cavill's version of Batman and Superman to carry on into the DCU's versions and castings of those characters. Now here I would say, arguably, yes. It will be pretty strange to see the same Wonder Woman from the DCEU stand side by side, eventually, that is, in the Trinity lineup with a new and younger Superman and Batman. And yes, technically within this universe we're about to go into, well, in a couple of years' time, keeping Gal on can still make sense in terms of the storytelling perspective. I'm not ignoring that because I see people comment this as well. Because after all, there's a whole infinite multiverse out there, so in this one, Superman and Batman can look different, but Wonder Woman, among some other castings like Peacemaker, Amanda Waller, will look the same. And TDK from the Suicide Squad will now look like Guy Gardner's Green Lantern. But I think the thing with that is that it should probably be addressed as to how we got into this new, soft, rebooted universe. And if we're being honest here, the Flash movie really didn't do a good job of that in terms of how it didn't serve as a good reset into the new James Gunn and Peter Safran DCU. Since we have had it confirmed by James Gunn that the ending of the movie isn't the new DCU. And that ending revealed a George Clooney Bruce Wayne, and he is not, to those people who still believe it, he is not the DCU Batman. Some people think that he is. I've been replying to comments even recently. Gunn has shot this down so many times replying to fans, so hopefully you seeing this on screen right now will help you realize that. But the main point here on the bottom line is that The Flash didn't really do a good, reset into this softly rebooted, resetted DCU. And as to if we are going to get an answer behind that or some kind of addressable moment, I honestly don't think so. I think it's going to be more like, well, okay, we're in a new soft rebooted universe now. Just kind of, get along with it. Okay, look, clearly, here's a new movie. Here's a new casting for Superman. And I think people will eventually gel with that. But again, the problem, if you will, is that, like, eventually when Gal pops up as Wonder Woman, we'll be like, oh, so how did this happen? But I digress. The thing is, will Gal Gadot stand out like a sore thumb? Because arguably she will be the most publicly recognized actor staying on from the old DCEU. And my answer to that is, well, I guess that she will whenever she pops up. But I think whether you like this or not, people will still understand eventually that we're obviously in a new universe versus that of the old DCEU's one. That's a big argument that a lot of people use. People are going to be so confused. Maybe, but I don't think that's going to stick for very long. I mean, this new Wonder Woman project wouldn't be for freaking quite a while. And for the most part, we will be fairly cemented with the exposition of this new DC universe with James Gunn's first movie, Superman Legacy. Plus, it's not like the general audience aren't used to, oh, look, Deadpool from Fox's universe is now going to Disney's MCU kind of thing. Oh, look, there's Hugh Jackman, and now he's like, maybe they're weak examples too, I don't know, but I'm just saying that people will still, I think, realize that this is some kind of new thing, even if Gadot stays on. And to be honest, with what we're about to get into, the very general audience, I'm not talking about you, I can't speak for everyone, but the very gen pop version of the moviegoer audience did like Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. And this is where it comes into this part of the video. So maybe it all comes back to what James Gunn said and what I read out earlier, and how he still wants to build upon what has worked in DC so far. Now, obviously, I think that's very debatable if Patty Jenkins' Wonder Woman 84 worked, but the first movie widely did, both critically and publicly. That needs to be said again. The first Wonder Woman movie was a big success. Now, I can't speak for you loving it right now, but what I will say is, it was very financially successful, it was critically successful, and the audience, like the gen pop kind of wide movie-going audience, were very pleased as well. But being very honest here and just really casting my mind back, and I suggest you do the same, cast your minds back to the release of the first Wonder Woman movie. I'm not saying it was flawless, Again, this isn't my own critique or praise here. And to be fair, casting your minds back to then, quite a few people did critique like the final act or the battle with Ares and some other things in the movie. But one thing I do remember about 2017's Wonder Woman release is that people were buzzed. It wasn't remotely massively hated on. People were enjoying it, and they also enjoyed their Wonder Woman actor, for the most part, that is. And, you know, getting onto that part of this, because I see a lot of comments about this as well, say what you will about Gal Gadot as an actor, as I've seen plenty of opinions out there, but I think the consensus is that with the first movie, with it being a lot more successful and enjoyable compared to Wonder Woman 1984, is that it also elevated Gal Gadot's performance up at the same time. So not nearly as many people were coming down hard on her for when that first movie released. Again, I know some people were still like, she didn't really have the range I was looking for, this, that, and the other. But when that movie was kind of, she's in the middle and everything is built around her and it did very well, my point is that people were overall quite happy. But then when you have Wonder Woman 1984 release with Patty Jenkins making a much, 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 much worse movie, well then the worst movie also drags down the main actor as well, if I'm making some kind of sense there. So I do think it's interesting how, and I do get it simultaneously, when you have one big mark against you that didn't do well, with Patty Jenkins deciding to take the sequel in the direction she did, how the audience, for the most part, forget how buzzed they were back in 2017 with the success of the first movie. And I'm not saying Wonder Woman 84 didn't deserve all the criticism that it got. I'm not saying that. What I'm trying to open the door to you to think about is that because of that, people kind of almost completely have erased from their mind how much they did enjoy the makeup and recipe of what went into that first movie, including Gal Gadot. But when it kind of goes wrong with the sequel, people are like, oh no, God, like, no, please get it away. We don't want that in our DCU. So with that being said, it makes me wonder if Wonder Woman 1984 released and had the same audience response to it as what the first movie did, I wonder if people would be going as hard on Gal Gadot as they are right now. Because I do read a lot of things like that, and I don't go searching for it. Sometimes it just pops up on my feed. But of course, though, I do need to stress this doesn't eliminate one thing that's in a lot of fans' minds. Even if Wonder Woman 84 was wildly successful, people might still be thinking and echoing the thought that is currently out there. And this is what I think it all comes down to. All while people, and hopefully some people may have learned during this video, understand that Gunn is inevitably keeping on some actors from the old DCEU. It's that the Trinity are the most widely known characters, made up of Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. They are simply the most iconic DC characters. So maybe it's more about that, perhaps, to give the new universe that much more of a fresher feel, even though it feels ironic to say that since we've always known he's been keeping on some characters. But again, to give like the overall feel of it, a fresher feel, if you will, yeah, you're keeping some actors in the same castings, but maybe to give it some more weight to the illusion of a new DCU that you're making with Peter Safran. If you've already recast 2/3 of the DC Trinity, maybe do that with Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman as well. And I think the reason why I also subscribe to that overall sentiment there is because doing that would make the new universe feel a lot more new. Whereas keeping her in that casting could remind people of their lack of interest for the former DCEU, in where the past several plus movies haven't even broke $400 million in the box office. But then again, maybe you right there are thinking right now, and I've seen comments like this on my video when I first covered this, no, keep her. Maybe it could be good. After all, going back to my point a minute ago, people were a lot more buzzed about Wonder Woman when it first released back in 2017, but got that bitter taste in their mouths after the director Patty Jenkins took to the sequel and really changed a lot of things up. Even James Gunn has said something like that himself, with how Wonder Woman 84 is nothing like Wonder Woman 1. And what he, in my interpretation of that, is like, it went so far away of what really made that first movie successful. And this is likely why Gunn and Safran didn't like Patty Jenkins' treatment for Wonder Woman 3. But what they did like is Gal Gadot. And even with all of this being said and done, like when we see Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman again in the DCU, unless the current order changes, it wouldn't be for quite a few years. James Gunn has already given us the release order of his movies and shows. That takes us up until at least 2027 with Swamp Thing, if you want to do the math of like 2 movies and TV shows a year with what Peter Safran said. We still have 10 plus projects to be announced before we move on to Chapter 2. So it is possible that the rebooted Wonder Woman with the same actor, Gal Gadot, could be a part of those final 10 plus project announcements that are yet to complete Chapter 1. Of course, we also can entertain a potential reshuffling of the Chapter 1 release order that could come about in the future, but I intuitively just don't think that will really happen in a major way. I still think he's got to establish the new DCU, the new DCU castings, a massive exposition with how different this world, feels in Superman Legacy, hitting the ground running where superheroes have existed and they exist right now, and what that feels and how different that feels to the former DCEU. So I think we'll all feel settled with these new characters. Also, the continuity of Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman's Themyscira, if you're still with me there, will likely be changed in this reboot with Paradise Lost, one of the projects of Chapter 1. Then, after all is settled and hopefully people like this new DCU, that still remains to be seen, eventually Gal Gadot will enter. And it wouldn't be called Wonder Woman 3, by the way, in my opinion. Just because Gal would be staying on doesn't mean that her character wouldn't be retconned in some ways more than others. I'm not saying everything, so a lot of Wonder Woman 1 could have happened, but maybe not some of the God lore there, because some of that God lore, if you will, may be changed in Paradise Lost, since that's a prequel going back to the very early days of Themyscira. No, it doesn't have Wonder Woman in it, but I think it would likely be called Wonder Woman subtitle something. And with that, maybe going back to my point earlier, just like how a lot of the audience, and believe it or not, critics liked the first movie and it made quite a bit of money, maybe the audience would like Gunn's decision for the most part. Maybe not you, but maybe the general audience who loved that first movie, again, look up the audience scores, maybe they, after, having, their spirits crushed with Wonder Woman 84, can't speak for everyone, maybe you love it, I don't know, but when they see, hopefully when it's handled correctly again, they'll be like, oh, yeah, no, this is kick-ass, and, we'll have like a slightly rebooted, maybe, actual Wonder Woman who uses her sword and shield, like the first movie compared to that of the second. But either way, guys, knowing that this is a soft reboot, knowing that some actors have always been staying on in this new DCU, do you think, with all of that being said and done, that if 2/3 of the Trinity are recast, which, one has already been, and we're getting a new Batman, should all of them be, including that of Wonder Woman? Or do you think, well, no, perhaps James Gunn will make a kick-ass project for Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman? And I have to admit, like, she is, and I've said this before, I'll say it again, she is a picture-perfect, like, casting of the Wonder Woman character, and I know a lot of people feel that way. A lot of people, as I've mentioned, enjoyed that first movie. It's just that the second movie completely soured everything about Wonder Woman in the DCEU for a lot of people. Not everyone, but for a lot of people. Then she turned into Cameo Woman by the end of it with Shazam and then the Flash movie. But that doesn't mean, for, the other side of this argument, that with the right building blocks that people couldn't be entertained by her again in the future project handled in the correct way. So what's it to be? Let me know down in the comments below with everything I've said. I hope that people watched at least most of this video before commenting, because I really wanted to play both sides of the fence here with like how it could still work, how it still maybe shouldn't work, and if you're doing that with the main characters and recasting them with the Trinity, maybe you should recast all of them. Another point I totally forgot to mention, of course, is as well that, how can Batman be recast? Well, we get that one. Ben Affleck wasn't going to come back, but how can you not, keep on Henry Cavill's Superman, but keep on Gal Gadot? I've seen a lot of people say that. Well, according to Gunn, as we've already been over, Cavill didn't fit his vision, but Gadot apparently can. But this is the thing. This is the point I didn't really mention in this video with regards to this. That just rubs people the wrong way. They still quite simply think, but you could have gone that direction with Cavill, but you didn't. So it's really one big multifaceted debate here. There's so many little intricacies as to for and against, I think, as to why this should or shouldn't happen. And is it ultimately a mistake? Let me know that. Mistake or not, that should be one of the main responses down in the comments below, and then expand on why. Looking forward to seeing your comments, guys. Please like this video if you did enjoy it. I know it was a bit of a rambly one, but I love getting into the discussion-based type videos, and this is most certainly a discussion to have. Do consider subscribing for more videos like this, of course, on the channel, but thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you people of the DCU in the next video. Goodbye.